Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to Growth Habits with Ngozi, your personal guide on the journey of growth. Our light seems to be misbehaving today, but it's all good. So, how is everyone? Trust we are good. Trust we had an awesome weekend. Um, did I do anything different this weekend? Not really. I hope we are not like me, always doing basically the same thing every weekend. And I ask us in the group, if you're part of the group, to always tell us what did you do differently this weekend? What was the activity that you did? But it appears nobody does any new thing because nobody responds. So please, let's try. So once again, welcome to Growth Habits. If you're joining me live, I'm so glad to have you here. If you're also watching on the replay, thank you for joining me. I do not take your time for granted. There are so many other things you could have been doing with your time, but you choose to spend it right here with me every Tuesday afternoon. And for this series on spiritual growth, the time is 2 p.m., but usually we hold it by 12 noon. So you probably will see a poll. I hope it's showing. It's supposed to show a poll there asking us whether we prefer to continue on the 2 p.m. or we should go back to our 12 noon once we are done with this spiritual growth series. So please do respond to that poll if you can see it. If you can't see it, let me know so that I will put up a poll in the comment section for us to tell us what we would prefer, the 2 p.m. going forward, or we go back to our 12 noon once we are done with the spiritual growth series. As I told us before, this is a series that is near and dear to my heart. This is a part of my life that is so important, so very important. Welcome everyone that's joining me once again. I'm glad you're here. So glad that you took out this time to be here. I hope you can hear me clearly. Please let me know if you can hear me clearly. If my voice is clear, okay, if my voice is clear and you can hear everything I'm saying, please do let me know. All right. So, okay. I'm seeing, okay, 12 noon. All right. No problem. By the time others also contribute their opinions, we'll know how to go on. But for this spiritual growth series, it has to be 2 p.m. We will figure out the rest as we go. As I promised us, I'm going to bring on some people. Yes, Michael, welcome, welcome. You're one of my top fans. You don't miss a session, and you comment on almost every post. So thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. So I was saying that I promised us I'll bring on some people for this spiritual growth series, and the first guest will come up on Tuesday next week. So we are going to have 3 guests coming up this session for the spiritual growth series. And by the end of August, we'll see whether this series will spill into September. Right now, there's a possibility it will spill into the first week of September. But let's see. We never know. Okay, so we started this series last week, as I said, this series on spiritual growth, and we just did a general introduction on what spiritual growth is all about. And we said that basically it involves learning and leaning into God. I have to emphasize the into because it is it's not leaning on God. No, it's not leaning on God, which is what we are used to hearing. We hear more, I'm leaning on God, I'm depending on God. That is not what spiritual growth is. Well, it's part of it, but what we emphasized last week was leaning into God, being able to identify yourself in God. being able to understand who you are in God, being able to say anything about yourself, but let the basis of that knowledge, the basis of that activity, the basis be in God. So, and we also said that is a journey of growing in faith, in knowing more about God, and also in becoming that person that He created you to be. We all, have a vision for ourselves. We all have an idea of who we want to be. But the question is, who does God want you to be? Who did He plan for you to be? That is the question. It's not always about, it's not even about who we want to be really at all. It's not about who we want to be, because you might want to be a number of things, but who does God want you to be, and how do you become that person? How do you um is it evolve into that person that God wants you to be? And that is what spiritual growth is all about. That was the introduction we did last week, and I hope we gained something. I also gave the opportunity in the beginning, if you don't even know this God at all, because we can't be talking about growth in something you have not even started. So we gave that opportunity. And if also today, if you are just joining us and you also do not have a relationship at all with God, you don't even understand this thing we are talking about, growth in the spirit, please, this is another chance. This is another opportunity. It's not hard. It's not difficult. Jesus has made it easy for us. He has made it so simple. Just accept Him, confess Him, accept Him, and the journey begins for you. So take this 1 minute once again and just give that opportunity to anyone who is watching live, watching on the replay, who has not really encountered God, who has not really started the relationship. Talk less of having a journey, or talk less of growing in it. Just take this minute. It does not take more than that. And confess Him in your heart as the Lord of all, the Lord of your life, the Lord of everything. And then acknowledge that He is that Lord of your life. As you do this, the journey begins. He comes. I think I was watching, I believe it was Whitney Houston when she was still alive. And she was talking about, there's a movie she did called The Preacher's Wife. I don't know how many of us ever either heard of or watched that movie. It's called The Preacher's Wife. And of course, she acted as a preacher's wife. And in one of the scenes, they were in church and she was leading worship as the preacher's wife. And if I remember correctly, it's like that became like a praise session, because it was a movie. They were acting, they were singing, and along the line, things changed, the atmosphere changed in that movie set. And one thing she said when she was being interviewed, because she brought up that particular scene, she said that when you call upon God, He shows up. And that was profound to me, because this was not a Christian per se. It wasn't a Christian gathering. They were acting. They were acting in a movie. And the movie, yes, it was about a pastor. And yes, in that movie, she was acting as the pastor's wife and she was singing in a church, but it was acting. But because when she was singing, she kind of, left acting and truly began to worship God. And when you call upon Him, He answers, He shows up. So I don't forget that interview, because it confirms to me that at any time that we call upon God, it doesn't matter whether you're a Christian in quote, it doesn't matter whether you've never known about Him and you're just hearing about Him at that moment, when you call upon Him, He shows up. He shows up. So if you take this minute now, you call upon Him, he shows up. He shows up. So um, if you took that minute as I was talking and you called upon him and you asked him to just help you, because we really can't help ourselves, then he truly heard you and he truly came and he answered you. When you call upon him, he shows up. He shows up. Okay, so welcome to the family once again. If you did that, if you took that opportunity, welcome to the family. We are one big family in God. Yeah. All right. So, having sorted that out once again, let me welcome a couple of you before I go on. Peace, Waforth. Welcome for joining me. Welcome today. Thank you for joining me. I'm glad you're here. Mike Gopeni, welcome. Welcome. Glad you joined me. Michael Ofeimu, welcome. I'm glad you joined me. Vera Otamiri, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm glad you are here this afternoon. Who else is here with me? Kunle Williams, Adebola, welcome. Chinwendo, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're all here this afternoon to share with me. Okay, so we are moving on to the next aspect of spiritual growth, and that is the path to spiritual growth. And as I thought of this topic, I realized that, do you know, there's really no path per se, because there is no one way. There is no one um, 10 steps to spiritual growth. It doesn't exist. It truly does not exist. Chinwendu, yes, good afternoon, my dear, welcome. There is really no 3 steps to spiritual growth, 4 steps to, it doesn't exist, because Can you hear me now? Can you hear me, please? I need to know if you can hear me now. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. So that's better. Sorry, I don't know what happened, but somehow the sound went off along the line while I was talking. But I'm glad you can hear me now. Okay, okay, awesome, awesome. So I was talking about lending yourself to discipleship and allowing yourself to be taught, allowing yourself to be taught, and following someone as they are following Christ. And I also said that we need to be careful when we're choosing who we're following so that we're not following the wrong person. Um, if you kind of train your ears to hear God, you would know who to follow. He would always show you, would always lead you right on who to follow. So, very important, very key, very essential that we follow the right people. The Bible tells us to be careful how we hear. It's not just what we hear, but how we hear. So let's ensure that we hear through the filter of God's word. We don't just hear through our ears, but whatever we hear, we filter it through God's word. Okay. So that is the I guess the first step. Well, do you call it first step? That is one way to ensure that you're on the path to spiritual growth. Lend yourself to being discipled. Lend yourself to being taught, and ensure that you're being taught right by filtering the things you hear through the word. Filter everything. Let the filter for everything be the word of God. So filter whatever you hear through the word. Precious Sigete, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Good afternoon to you. Okay, so that is one way to ensure that you're on the path to spiritual growth, discipleship. Lend yourself to being taught. Another thing that you need to do to ensure that you are growing spiritually is truly to get to know God. To get to know God for yourself. Get to know God for yourself. Do the needful. Precious Ejika, good afternoon. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. I think, is this the first time you're here? I think this is the first time I'm noticing. Welcome. I'm glad that you joined me this afternoon. So I was telling us that one very important way or one important thing on being on the path to spiritual growth is knowing God for yourself. Get to know God for yourself. Listen to preachings, please do. Listen to sermons, go to church, do all those, but know God for yourself. Take out time. Take out time to know this God you're following for yourself. Take out time. I don't even know how to emphasize this, but it needs to be emphasized. It's not about the God somebody else told you about. Do we get me? Okay, this is your first time, Precious. Welcome. Yeah, celebrate you, first timer. Um I hope you enjoy yourself today because the aim is for us to grow together. And as I said from the beginning, this month we're talking about spiritual growth. So I was saying that it's essential for you to know God for yourself. It is important. Don't just know your father's God. Don't just know your mother's God. Don't just know your pastor's God. Know him for yourself. Who is he to you personally? In what ways have you experienced him? What encounters have you had for him? What encounters have you had with him? If you're asked right now, who is God to you, what can you say? What will you say? You know, I hear people say, oh, the God of, they mention maybe their pastor, they will work for me. Good, perfect, wonderful. But what of the God of, for like example, the God of Ngozi? How do I relate with God myself? Can I stand the same way that pastor can stand confidently in his time of preaching or whatever and say the God of, and he calls his own name, stand for me, do this. Why can't you do the same? You should be able to do the same. For you to experience God in all his facets, you do have to know him for yourself. Welcome, Godwin Chooks. I'm glad you're here, sir. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining me. Uchechukwu Egbebu, welcome. Thank you for joining me. So I was talking about knowing God for yourself. Don't depend too much on the God that your father knows, the God that your mother knows, the God that your pastor knows. Don't depend too much on that quote God. Know him for yourself. Be able to say the God of, you call your name. Florence, welcome. Florence Ngozi Kingdom, welcome. Be able to say the God of, and you confidently call your name because you have had some experiences with this God, because you have encountered him. You know, I can confidently sit here and say the God that heals because he has healed me before, and he will still heal me in future if I need it. I can say it with all confidence. You cannot convince me that God does not heal. You can't. See, this confidence does not come from a story somebody told me. It comes from an encounter that I had with him. It comes from a personal experience that I had with him. So, can you get to know the God you claim to serve? Can you confidently say, this God is an ever present help? Have you experienced him in that way? Can you truly say it? Can you stand and confidently say, like I said, he's a healer? Can you stand and confidently say he's my friend? Have you experienced him in those ways? So spiritual growth comes from knowing truly God himself for yourself, experiencing him, being able to talk about him in the first person. Can you confidently stand and say God hears prayers and answers prayers? Not because of a story someone told you, but because in your life, he has heard and answered you. And you can give specifics. You know, we all generally say, oh, God hears prayers because we threw one prayer in the universe and, you know, it was answered. No. I mean, can you specifically say, I cried out to God concerning A, B, C, and he heard and he answered? So we must, essential, must get to know God for ourselves. Not the God that I'm talking about, as in me now talking to you. Yeah, it helps that I share my experiences with you. It helps. But what is your own experience of him? What are the things he has dealt with you on? In what areas has he shown himself to you? In what areas has he dealt with you? What areas? This knowing God does not, is not a one day thing. It's not something that, oh, I fasted 40 days. That's why I know God. No, it's not even where I'm going. It's an everyday understanding of your very person as you exist in God. It's an everyday understanding of your very essence as you exist in God. It's an understanding of all that He has done for you because He is God. It's an understanding of all that Jesus purchased for you on the cross personally. Is being able to know these things, know it for yourself, understand it for yourself, experience it for yourself. This is how you grow. This is how you grow. Because I've seen something that bothers me a little bit. I see people who are, in quote, prayer warriors. There are people that pray almost 24 hours. And in that multitude of prayers, in that multitude of or quantum of time they have spent apparently speaking to God, they still don't know Him. They still don't understand who they are in Him. They still are not um, they are not clear about their identity in Christ. They are not clear about the things God has done for them already. They are not clear about the things that they need to do. They're not clear about the ones that has been settled and they don't really have to struggle for. And yet, they spent hours on end praying. If we remember in the first session, I mentioned that praying is not a matter of just talking. It's a communication, it's a communion, it's an exchange. It's being able to speak to God, yes, and at the same time have Him speak back to you. As I told us last week, if you spend, let's say, 30 minutes praying, and in that 30 minutes, God did not speak once, you have not prayed though. Go back. You've done a monologue. You've wasted 30 minutes. Go back. Pray again. Because prayer is a communion. And if you truly experience prayer where you are talking to God, He's talking to you, He's putting some things into your spirit, you can't come out of that place of prayer and then be normal. I don't know. I can't. For me, it's absolutely an impossibility. You can't truly spend time with God and come out normal. How is that even possible? If we really know that this God we are talking about is just too much, I don't even know. Sometimes the words are not sufficient. If we truly understand that He is the God of all the earth, the creator of all things, the magnificent one, and then you go into a place and you stay with this God, just 10 minutes. I don't even want to go into 30 minutes, 1 hour. And you sit with Him for 10 minutes. How do you come out of that place the same? How is that even possible? How is it possible for you to have communed, shared with God, and then you come out and you're still the way you were? I don't know how that is possible. So know Him, get to know Him, spend time, talk to Him, allow Him to talk to you. Spend that time exchanging information with Him. Spend that time just being with Him. I don't even know if I should even go this far because sometimes, this can be a little bit controversial. No, we know that God is always with us, and we know that we can discuss with Him at any time. Anytime. As I am here talking to you, I am also talking to Him because I can't even, how do I express this? I can't understand, or I can't even imagine a situation where we are not talking. I can't imagine a situation where my day is just going on and I'm not having any kind of communion with God at all. We're not having any kind of discussion. How does that day go? See, it's the conscious, because I've come to understand, I've come to know that He's always with me. There is no time He's not near me. There is no time He's not around me. There's no time that He's not present. I've come to know that. And it's something that I know and I know and I know. You can't convince me otherwise. And because I know that He's always here with me, anywhere I am, He's there. If I walk into a room and, whatever was happening in that room before doesn't matter, it means that God has just walked into that room because He's with me every time. So as I move into anywhere, God has moved into that place, that arena. So I know this. And if He's here now, why would I keep silent now? Why won't I be talking to Him? These things for me it's sounding, it's normal. Why will I not be having a discussion with Him? Why will I have, let's even take it, why would you be with your best friend, let's say, your best friend in all the world? You're sitting with your best friend and you're not communicating. See, communication is not always words. Please, communication is not always words. But how is it possible that you're sitting with your best friend in all the world, the person that understands you, the person that knows all your secrets, know where all the bones are hidden, that kind of thing. The person knows everything there is to know about you, and you're sitting with them for 5 minutes and there is no communication going on. It's not even possible. Even if you're not talking to each other, somehow you're knowing, I don't know how to explain this, but you're communicating. You're knowing how the person is feeling. You even have some silent communications. You have some things, the way you moved your hand, the person understands, the person knows what that means. Do we get what I'm saying? That is knowing. That is the knowing. Knowing Him and being able to walk in that knowing. Being able to walk in that knowing. This is the leaning into God that we talked about in the first session. This is the leaning in, the knowing Him, the just being comfortable in Him, the being able to commune with Him with or without words, the being able to relate with Him in every situation, at every time, at every point in time, knowing that He's with you and you are in Him and He's in you constantly, every time. I think this is part of why we experience stunted growth. It's part of it in our walk with God. We are waiting for a time of prayer. Then we can discuss with Him. Then we can commune with Him. Then we can, share fellowship with Him. Why do you have to wait for, in quote, a time of prayer? Why is your life not a prayer? Why are you not praying constantly? Why are you not communing constantly? So, knowing Him is key to experiencing any kind of growth in the things of the Spirit. Know Him for yourself. Understand to an extent, because we can't know all of God. We know we can't know all. But even the little that we are able to comprehend and able to experience, are we experiencing it all? Are we flowing in it? So knowing Him, knowing Him, knowing Him is key to our spiritual growth. Knowing Him. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about on this path to spiritual growth is being. Remember, the first one was knowing, because the first one was actually discipleship, allowing yourself to be taught, allowing yourself to experience being led, being taught in the things of God. Then we talked about knowing God. Now I want to talk about being. And this flows from knowing. Being flows from knowing. Because it's when you know Him and you know the path he has for you, and you know his plans for you, then you can be, then you can be that which you have heard from him. So in experiencing spiritual growth, we need to know him, and then we need to be, or more like, do I say be, or more like become? Because when you know him, he begins to open your eyes to who you're supposed to be. He begins to show you the future. He shows you the present. He even shows you the past. He shows you everything. And in this time of knowing and hearing from him and understanding, you become. You become what you're seeing from him. You become what you're hearing from him. So just like I said, if you spend 10 minutes truly rubbing, will I say rubbing shoulders or rubbing, maybe that's not the right expression. You spend just 10 minutes being in the atmosphere of God. Yes, being in the atmosphere of God. You can't come out of that atmosphere and not have a little bit of him rub off on you. Is it possible? You can't. He has to rub off even if a little on you. And you also rub off on him. But that aspect, I don't know if I should go into that aspect because it might look like I'm trying to say God is becoming like us. No. But in that process, there's an exchange. You can't come out of a time of true communion with God and a part of him did not come off on you at all. It's not even possible. Mr. Innocent, welcome. Chinedu Eugene, welcome. Glad to see you. It's been long. It's really been long. Okay, so we're talking about being or becoming, more like it. And truly, if you have not known, you can't become. If you have not known, you cannot become. Because what are you becoming? You don't know. So you need to be able to spend quality time knowing God, knowing the Father, knowing his plans for you, knowing his expectations, knowing who he is, knowing how he works, knowing. As you spend time knowing, you begin to become. And it's that becoming that we see really as spiritual growth. This in the eyes of us human beings. Is that becoming that men see, because men really doesn't we don't see the knowing part. It's not always visible to the human eye that I'm knowing God. It's when I'm becoming what I have known. That's the one you see. That's the one your brother sees, any other person sees. So as you know him, as you begin to understand the facets of God, as you begin to understand his characteristics, as we begin to understand the way he feels, as we begin to understand the way he works, you become. Is that becoming that everyone sees? So that is the physical sign of growth. That's the one everybody notices because you're becoming, you're being more patient, you're being, I don't want to say good because, it's relative, but you're becoming a better person. You're becoming a better version of you. You're becoming more like God. You know, we say that, married couples, when they've been together for years, they begin to resemble each other. And not only do they begin to resemble each other, they begin to sound alike. And not only do they begin to sound alike, they begin to, have communication that nobody else understands. I don't know if I'm sure we have seen it. I'm sure we have seen it in couples that have been together for years. If this can happen, just merely because you live with this person and you share just about everything with this person, Why will it not happen when you begin to dwell in God? When you begin to walk and understand, when you begin to lean into God, why will you not begin to look like Him? You will. You begin to look like Him. You begin to see people through His lens. This is one, um, it's good, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing that we see people through God's lens. But it is one aspect of spiritual growth that is a little difficult for us human beings to handle. Because when you see people the way God sees them, you don't you don't get as upset with people, truly. You don't get as upset with people. You tend to understand why people do the things they do because you're seeing them through God's lens. And this is not possible unless you have gone through the knowing stage. When you go through the knowing stage, you begin to become, you start resembling God. I am not speaking blasphemy. It is truth. It is the word. You begin to resemble Him because you're spending so much time with Him. You start looking like Him. You start talking like Him. You begin to do the things He would do. So after knowing, you become. This is the path to spiritual growth. After knowing, you become. The Bible tells us that we do not conform, to this world, but we are transformed by the renewal of our minds. How do we renew this mind? It's by being with God, getting to know Him, taking up His own mind. Then our own is being transformed. And we begin to look like Him. We begin to talk like Him. We begin to act like Him. Have we not read these stories on social media where maybe somebody does one act of kindness and the person that the act is done to begins to ask, "Are you an angel?" Why? It's because that activity that this person just did is more like something God would do. And we attribute that activity to His angels, because He's not working without, by Himself. He's working with angels. He's working together, working with you, working with me. So when you spend time knowing God, when you spend time with Him, you begin to look like Him. You are becoming more like Him. We're talking about spiritual growth. Maybe you were expecting to hear me say, read your Bible, pray, and do those things. Yes, you must do those ones. It's not even, those ones are no longer points for discussion. Because how are you a Christian? You're not praying, you're not reading your Bible. Those ones are basic. Those ones are step one. That's step one. Uzo Koli, welcome. Glad you joined me this afternoon. Those ones are step one. We're talking about growing. And to grow, you know Him, then you become like Him. You allow yourself to be transformed by Him. You allow yourself to be what you see in Him. What you observe by leaning into Him, you allow yourself to become. Because truly, you do have to allow yourself to become. It's not as if God cannot make you become. It is better when you become. When you allow yourself to be the image you see. So you become, then you do. That which you have seen, do likewise. That way that you have seen God, act in that way. Those characteristics you have seen in God, Imbibe them. Allow them to walk in and through you. And before you know it, people are asking you, are you an angel in human form? Because you're showcasing characteristics that are divine. You're showcasing characteristics that don't align with the normal that they're used to. You're showcasing characteristics that are beyond human comprehension. So know him. And in knowing him, become that person that you are seeing in God. Become that image that you're beholding by knowing him, by spending time with him. Become that person. Become that image that you're seeing. And honestly, truthfully, you will begin to see your life in a different way. You know, I keep saying this, that we cannot truly spend time with God and come out not looking like him. It's not possible. It's not possible. So we need to spend time with him. Remember, once again, it's not a matter of I spent 10 hours praying. No. In that 10 hours, did you really commune? It's better truly to carry the consciousness of him every minute of the day, to be conscious that as I am here, God is here, to be conscious of as I'm walking about doing whatever it is I'm doing, God is present. You know, there's this expression we used to have. We used to say, what would Jesus do? That helped us. But I think we need to refine it. It's not just what would Jesus do. Because yes, it helps you when you think, what would Jesus do in this situation? You would actually do that because you're conscious of it. So let's take it a step further. It's not just what would Jesus do. Yes, we have that consciousness, but let's be, or let's become who Jesus is. Let's become the image of God that we are seeing. Let's become that image. Because that is truly how we begin to experience growth in our spiritual lives. That is truly how we begin to do, things that seem superhuman. I don't know if we've heard testimonies, just, was it yesterday? Yes, I think it was yesterday. I saw a testimony in Paul Enenche's church. A young girl. See, when I see testimonies of young children, those ones thrill me more than adult testimonies. Do you know why? Because, adults can pretend. Children cannot pretend. If they're in pain, they'll tell you they're still in pain. No. If after you prayed, nothing happened, they will tell you. They don't, most times, children don't have the capability to pretend the way that we as adults do. So this young girl was involved in an accident, and part of her leg, her feet more like, was chopped off in that accident. And she, I think if I remember correctly, she insisted on being brought to Paul Enenche's church. And as she was brought to that church, she was not able to walk on that leg. It was bandaged. It was even actually bleeding in the video I saw. And part of the leg was gone. They were even considering whether they should cut off the whole feet so that she can be saved. And this young girl came into that church and she received her healing. And suddenly this girl was jumping and dancing on that leg she has not been able to put on the ground. Now, we would want to say, is it something special about Paul Enenche or about the church? And I will say that it's not as if it's something special per se, because this is something that you yourself can do. This is something that I also can do. It's a matter of that Paul Enenche has soaked himself so much in God that he exudes that thing he has seen. He has soaked himself so much in the consciousness of God, the healer, that he exudes healing by his very presence. Healing just happens. So, what part of God have you soaked yourself in? What aspect of the divine have you soaked yourself in? Such that at your very appearing, those things are made manifest. That is the knowing and becoming. That is the knowing and becoming. As I round up this afternoon, I tell us once again that it's not about the marathon prayer, fasting. Please pray, please fast. They're essential. They are good things. They help your flesh. They help you. But it's in the getting to know, the leaning into this God, the being able to swim, if we can even understand that, is the being able to swim in God, in allowing ourselves to experience God, to experience Him in whatever dimension we seek. We can experience Him in so many different dimensions. There are so many. But it's the allowing yourself to experience Him in those dimensions. And as you see, as you behold these aspects of God, also allowing yourself to become that which you have seen. Thank you so much for joining me again this afternoon as we take these journeys together, as we grow in every facet of our lives together. As I said, this August, we are concentrating on spiritual growth, because I believe that without growth in our spirit, the other aspects of growth we experience has a comma. It's not as if it doesn't work. You grow in other aspects even without growing your spirit. But with the growth in your spirit, those other aspects are magnified. Those other aspects come out better. Once again, thank you for joining me this afternoon. This is Growth Habits with Ngozi. We are here every Tuesday. Usually 12 noon, but for the month of August, for this spiritual growth series, we had to shift the time to 2 p.m. So thank you for joining me. And yes, there's a poll. I hope we can see the poll. There's supposed to be a poll asking us whether we would want us to go back to the 12 noon after this August period, or we stick with this 2 p.m. Please vote on that poll if you can see it. If not, I will put it up again in the comments. Let's share our opinions and know what we should do. Also, remember, join our Facebook group and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The two are linked to this live session. Join the group, subscribe to the YouTube channel. As you subscribe to the YouTube channel, engage with the content, listen to the videos there, watch them, listen, comment, engage with the content. And if you have any suggestions of something you would want me to deal with that has to do with growth, please put it in the comments or send me a personal message. Just get the information across to me and I would see. You can't see the link. Oh, wow. Okay. Or the poll. Which one can't you see also? The poll, or you can't see the poll. If it's the poll, I will put it back I'll put it in the comments. I'll put it in the comments so that we can vote and see how to continue after this spiritual growth series. Okay, so follow us on all our social media handles We're on Instagram, Growth Habits with Ngozi. Facebook, our group, Growth Habits with Ngozi. Okay, I will put up the poll again. Growth Habits with Ngozi. We're on TikTok, Growth Habits with Ngozi. And of course, we have our YouTube channel, Growth Habits with Ngozi. Follow us on all our social media handles. Engage with us in all these platforms. We will grow this together because the journey, we are taking it together. You're not alone. As I'm talking, I am learning, I am growing alongside with you. So thank you so very much. Oh, let me just mention also. Okay, let me leave that for next week. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Next week, we're going to have a guest. In fact, just prepare your heart, prepare yourself, prepare, take away all the religious garb we used to wear. Remove them, remove them, and just prepare to learn and to grow. Thank you so much once again for joining me. See you next week, Tuesday. Bye.